Welcome to the Psychology Undergrad.
It's good to be here. I am definitely ready to dive into this seminar material.
We have quite the syllabus to get through today.
Yeah.
I mean, usually when we meet up to discuss the week's reading, it's a couple of journal articles, maybe a meta-analysis if we're lucky.
Right.
But this week, we are looking at a stack of reading that feels heavier than, like, the combined weight of every textbook I bought freshman year.
It is a massive amount of material, but honestly, it's not just the volume that makes it heavy. The subject matter is. It's incredibly dense.
Yeah.
We aren't just memorizing definitions of operant conditioning today. We are looking at the long-term, and I mean the entire developmental arc effects of divorce on children.
All right. And just to set the stage for everyone listening in, whether you're walking across the quad, sitting in your dorm, or, driving to your internship, we are approaching this as peers. We are two students navigating the complex world of psychological research together. We want to get past the dry statistics and understand the human side of this data.
Yeah.
Because when you read these case studies, they aren't just numbers. They are people's lives.
Exactly. We want to approach this with intellectual curiosity, sure, but also with empathy. We're trying to understand the trajectory of these families. It's less about what is the p-value and more about what does it feel like to live this.
But before we dive into the trauma, the resilience, and the sheer cognitive load of this reading list, we need to talk about something crucial for every student.
Oh, absolutely.
And that is rest.
You cannot process this level of information or handle the emotional weight of it without proper sleep. It's just not possible.
We all know the stereotype of the sleep-deprived undergrad pulling all-nighters. But from a neurological perspective, I mean, sleep is when memory consolidation happens. If you aren't sleeping, you aren't learning.
It's a biological fact.
That is why we are so excited to be partnering with Cozy Earth.
I have been looking into their stuff. And we all know the struggle of the undergrad budget. You're usually sleeping on whatever scratchy polyester sheets were on sale at the big box store.
Oh, for sure.
But environment matters. It really does.
It does. Cozy Earth has these incredible bamboo sheet sets. They are temperature regulating, which is a lifesaver if you're in a dorm or an apartment with dodgy AC. They're incredibly soft. And frankly, they feel like the kind of luxury we usually can't afford.
But here is the good news. They know sheets can be expensive for undergrads.
They do. So if you go to cozyearth.com/discount/PSYC101 and use the promo code PSYC101, you get a 21% discount.
Wow, 21%, that's specific.
It is, and it's a significant chunk of change.
That helps a lot. And frankly, investing in your sleep is investing in your GPA.
Exactly. That's PSYC101. Get the best night of sleep of your life so you can actually process what we're about to talk about.
Please do. You'll need it for this.
Okay, let's unpack this week's reading. The primary subject is the long-term effects of divorce on children. But we aren't looking at the immediate aftermath. We aren't looking at how are the kids doing 6 months later.
No, this is much bigger. We are looking at the relationship between mothers and their children over a 25-year span.
A quarter of a century. That is a lifetime.
It really is. It's the difference between being a toddler and being a fully formed adult with a career and a mortgage.
Our primary text is Mothers and Their Children After Divorce by Judith Wallerstein, Julia Lewis, and Sharon Packer Rosenthal, published in 2013. This is the heavy hitter.
Right. This is the report from a 25-year longitudinal study, so this is the big one.
But because we are good psychology students, we can't just take one study. Let's start with the methodology. This is section 1 of our seminar prep, the movie versus the snapshot.
This is a really helpful analogy for understanding study design. Most psychological research you read is cross-sectional. That's a snapshot.
Right.
You take a group of people, you ask them how they're doing right now, and you get a picture of that moment in time.
Like taking a photo of a car crash and saying, this looks bad.
Exactly. You see the bent metal, the broken glass. But a longitudinal study, especially one that lasts 25 years, is like watching the whole movie. You see the crash, sure.
Yeah.
But then you see the ambulance ride, you see the rehab, you see the years of physical therapy, you see how that person drives a car 10 years later.
Do they flinch every time they merge? Do they refuse to drive at night?
Exactly. You only get that from the movie.
And that is what Wallerstein did. She tracked the movie.
Yes. She followed 60 families. That involves 131 children.
Now, demographics matter here. Who are these people?
This is important for the critique later. These were families in Northern California. They were middle class, they were well educated, and crucially, they were non-litigating.
What does that mean in this context?
It means they weren't fighting in court over custody. These were, on paper, civil divorces.
So not the worst case scenario.
Not at all. They weren't calling CPS on each other or dragging each other through the mud. We're looking at what we might consider best case or at least average scenarios for divorce in that era.
Okay, that's key.
Exactly. And here is the most critical control factor. At the start of the study, before the divorce effects kicked in, all the children were evaluated. They were developmentally on target.
So these weren't troubled kids to begin with.
No, they were doing fine. Academically, socially, they were typical, healthy kids. This allows Wallerstein to argue that what happens later is a result of the divorce and the subsequent life changes.
Not some pre-existing condition or genetic disposition.
Exactly, and the timeline.
It was extensive. Interviews at the breakup. Then at 18 months, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, and finally 25 years.
It's just wild.
As an undergrad looking at this, the sheer patience required is mind-blowing. Most researchers, and let's be honest, most of us students, we want data now.
Right, you want to get your publication.
We want to run a survey and write the paper. To wait 25 years.
It's incredibly rare, it's expensive, and it's logistically a nightmare to track people down for that long. People move, change names, lose interest. Keeping a cohort together is hard work.
But there is a flip side to that intimacy, right?
Well,
the observer effect.
Right. The same clinicians interviewed these families for decades.
So if I'm a kid in this study, I'm seeing this researcher every 5 years. They know my whole life story.
Exactly. Does that build trust, allowing them to open up in ways they wouldn't to a stranger? Probably.
Sure.
But does it also bias the data? Does the researcher become part of the family narrative? It's a valid question. The researcher becomes a constant in a life where everything else is changing.
It's the Heisenberg uncertainty principle of psychology. By observing the family, do you change the family?
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it.
But let's look at what they found. Wallerstein breaks the mothers down into 3 groups based on their parenting quality over those 25 years. Let's look at Group A.
Group A are the continuity mothers. This made up about 46% of the sample.
So roughly half.
Roughly half. These are mothers who maintained good enough parenting consistently, from the marriage through the breakup and all the way through the next 25 years.
Good enough parenting. I like that term. It's not perfect, but it's consistent. It reminds me of Winnicott's concept. You don't have to be a perfect parent. You just have to not fail.
It means they were available, they were responsive, they prioritized the kids. But within this Group A, there are 2 very different stories depending on whether the mother remarried.
Right. We have the single mothers and the remarried mothers. Let's talk about the single mothers first. I call this subgroup the martyrs.
That is a heavy label, but it fits the description in the text. These were women who did not remarry.
And often, the divorce wasn't their idea.
Correct. In many of these cases, the divorce was triggered by the husband's infidelity. So these women were blindsided, they were hurt, they were rejected.
But here is where we get into that moral or almost like religious link to parenting. These mothers prioritized their children above everything, above their own romantic lives, above their social lives. It was almost ascetic.
They viewed it as a sacrifice, and practically it was a struggle. We are talking about financial hardship.
The second shift concept really applies here.
Yes, the sociological concept. You work a full-time job to pay the bills because the husband's income is gone, and then you come home and work a second full-time job raising the kids and managing the house.
There was one specific anecdote in the reading that really stuck with me. It was about the mother studying.
Oh, the bathroom story. That was incredibly visual.
Yeah. This mother was trying to improve her financial situation by going back to school, but she had small kids and a small living space. She didn't have childcare.
So she's trapped.
Totally. So late at night, she would lock herself in the bathroom to study.
And the children.
They sat on the floor outside the bathroom door, just waiting.
That image is so powerful. It shows the closeness, the dependency, but also the incredible pressure on that mother. She is literally walled off in a bathroom, trying to secure their future, while they are right there needing her.
And the text mentions something called the noble lie.
This is fascinating. These mothers hid their anger. Remember, the husbands often cheated. They left. But these mothers encouraged the children to have relationships with their fathers.
Even though the fathers were often absent or had started new families.
Yes. The mothers swallowed their pride and their rage to protect the child's image of the father. They lied about their own feelings to preserve the father-child bond.
So what is the outcome for the kids? You'd think Great mom, sacrificed everything, kids must be happy.
It's complicated. The study found deep gratitude. These kids love their moms. They would do anything for them. But there's also deep pity. Yes, they saw what their mothers gave up. There is a quote from a daughter in the study who referred to her mother as a woman in chains.
Oof, that is heavy. A woman in chains.
And another quote, "My mother never taught me about men," because the mother had effectively opted out of that part of life. She had no new experiences to share.
It raises a real discussion point. Is this good parenting? I mean, obviously they were fed and loved, but if you burden the child with the weight of your own sacrifice, that's a lot for a kid to carry.
It creates a dynamic where the child feels responsible for the mother's happiness. They can't leave, they can't rebel because mom gave up everything for me. It binds them together, maybe a little too tightly.
So that's the single moms in Group A. What about the remarried mothers? I call them the balancing act.
These women often initiated the divorce, and they remarried, often happily.
So the environment is different.
Very. Better finances, stepfathers who paid for college, a more normal middle-class life. They had the nice house, the vacations.
But there is a trade-off.
There always is. The attachment was described as less intense than with the single mothers. Because the mother has a husband, she has a life. She isn't looking to the child to be her everything.
So the kids are less responsible for her happiness.
Exactly. But then you introduce the complication of the stepfather.
And the favoritism. This part made me cringe.
The Cinderella dynamic, but sometimes reversed. There is an anecdote about a stepfather who absolutely adored his stepdaughter. She was outgoing, charming. He showered her with gifts, paid her tuition.
And the brother.
The stepfather ignored the shy brother. He just didn't click with him.
And what did the mom do? Did she fight for the son?
To keep the peace in her new marriage, she sent the son to boarding school.
That is heartbreaking. It feels like a transaction.
Yeah.
I will trade my proximity to my son for the stability of this marriage.
It highlights the difficulty of managing the new family. You have the father versus stepfather competition, and the mother is often the referee, trying to keep everyone happy, sometimes at the expense of one child's emotional well-being.
So even in Group A, the good group, it's messy.
It is deeply messy. There is no perfect outcome here.
Let's move to Group B, the downturn mothers. This was 29% of the study.
These mothers are defined by a specific trajectory. Their parenting quality dips significantly for roughly 4 years after the divorce, but then, and this is key, it recovered.
4 years is a long time in the life of a child.
It's an eternity. If that 4 years happens between age 12 and 16, that's high school, that's puberty, that's the whole ballgame.
Context matters here. These were often younger mothers, and the reading mentions many were exiting abusive or alcoholic marriages.
Right, so if we use a pop psychology concept here, think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Okay, let's unpack that. Maslow says you need to secure the basics, safety, survival, physiological needs before you can worry about higher level things like self-actualization or complex emotional nurturing.
Exactly. These moms were at the bottom of the pyramid. They were fleeing abuse. They had to find jobs maybe for the first time. They had to go back to school. They were in survival mode.
So parenting.
Parenting, specifically the high attention parenting kids need, is a higher level function. It requires emotional bandwidth. These moms didn't have it. They were focused on rebuilding the foundation.
And this created their gap years.
The latchkey experience, children left alone, disorderly households, older siblings forced to parent the younger ones.
There is a specific anecdote here, too. A young woman recalling those years.
She said, "Those were the loneliest years of my life."
And the study found that adolescents were hit the hardest by this gap.
Absolutely. Because just when they needed guidance, the guardrails came down. We saw risky behaviors, drugs, truancy, early sex.
The quote about the sex was gut-wrenching.
The girls seeking sex not for the physical act, but because, and I quote, "I just wanted to be held."
That really drives home the emotional void. It wasn't about rebellion. It was about a desperate need for connection, for touch, that they weren't getting at home because mom was surviving.
But there is a redemption arc here. That's why they are Group B and not Group C.
Right, the recovery.
Eventually, these mothers stabilized. They got the degree, they got the job, they remarried, they reestablished order.
And the relationship with the kids.
Sometimes it was repaired years later, often through a crisis.
The rescue.
Yes. There's a story of a daughter who fled her own abusive husband at midnight. She had nowhere to go. She goes back to her mother.
Now you might think, oh, the mother who was checked out for 4 years won't care.
But she did. The mother recognized the cycle of violence because she had lived it. She took the daughter in. She healed that bond. It's a powerful testament to the idea that it's never fully too late to parent.
But we have to talk about the abuse factor in Group B.
Mm,
The study describes some horror stories from the pre-divorce days.
it does. A child witnessing a father firing a gun, a child watching a mother on all fours trying to escape blows.
And the psychological manipulation.
The abusive fathers often manipulated the children. They would tell them the mother was stupid or incompetent. They tried to turn the kids against the protector.
And the result is this terrifying concept of intergenerational trauma.
We see it clearly. There is a mention of a son slapping his mother, and he admits, chillingly, "I am becoming just like my dad."
That is the fear, isn't it? That the template is stamped so deep you can't escape it.
It is. And that leads us, unfortunately, to Group C, the collapse mothers.
This is the darkest part of the study. 25% of the mothers.
1 in 4.
These are mothers who ceased to function effectively as parents after the divorce and never recovered.
Never recovered. That is the tragedy.
What is the profile here?
These women often had a history of mental health issues, depression, bipolar disorder, alcoholism. But, and this is the fascinating part, during the marriage, they functioned.
How? If they were struggling with mental health, how did they manage?
The marriage provided the scaffolding.
Explain that analogy.
Think of a building that is structurally unsound. The walls are weak. But if you put scaffolding around it, supports, braces, it stands up. It looks like a building. It functions like a building.
So the husband.
The husband's support, or maybe hired help paid for by the husband's salary, held these women up.
And divorce removes the scaffolding.
And the building collapsed.
What did that look like for the kids?
Chronic instability, suicide attempts, hospitalization, and a complete role reversal. We call it parentification.
The children become the caregivers.
There is an anecdote of an adolescent daughter fetching her drunken mother from bars. Imagine that. You are 14, 15 years old, and you are dragging your mother out of a bar, putting her to bed.
And where were the fathers?
That is the other tragedy. The fathers often did not intervene, even if they had resources.
So the kids felt abandoned by both.
One was mentally absent, the mother. One was physically absent, the father. It was a total loss.
The text mentions a visual symbol that these adult children carry.
Yes. Adults in their 30s carrying photos of their intact family from childhood, mourning the loss decades later.
Wow.
They are holding on to the only time they felt safe, the only time the scaffolding was holding the roof up.
That really challenges the legal system, doesn't it?
It does. The lesson here is that divorce settlements rarely account for the loss of that functional structure. A judge looks at a bank account. They don't look at the scaffolding that keeps a mentally fragile person functioning. They assume both parents are capable adults. Group C proves that isn't always true.
So we've seen the 3 groups.
Uh-huh.
But Section 5 of our outline covers the unexpected legacy and the internal template. This is Wallerstein's core theoretical argument.
This is what made her famous and controversial. She argues that divorce is not an acute crisis.
It's not like a bad flu.
Right. Most people think mom and dad split up, it's a rough year, then we adjust. Wallerstein says no, it is a chronic condition.
Like diabetes. You manage it forever.
Exactly. And her reasoning is this concept of the internal template.
What does she mean by that?
She argues that children learn how to be in relationships, how to resolve conflict, how to stay married by watching their parents. It's their blueprint.
Monkey see, monkey do. Social learning theory.
Essentially. Children of divorce, she claims, lack the internal model of how to resolve conflict or stay married. They don't know what a functional long-term resolution looks like because they didn't see it.
So they have a fear of failure.
Yes. The logic is, if my parents, who were the gods of my universe, failed, then I will fail too. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And this leads to what she calls the sleeper effect.
This is where the longitudinal data really matters. She argues the real damage doesn't show up at age 10 or 15. It shows up in adulthood, in their 30s.
When they're trying to form their own long-term relationships.
Exactly. She saw commitment issues, people avoiding marriage entirely because they were terrified, or rushing into doomed relationships just to prove they could do it, almost to get the failure over with.
And this leads to her big moral or ethical question, and this is the part that gets people riled up.
It definitely does. Wallerstein suggests that if a marriage is annoying but not destructive, so not abusive, just unhappy parents should consider staying together for the children.
That is a huge challenge to the modern mindset. We live in a culture that says personal happiness above all. You only live once. If you aren't happy, leave.
And Wallerstein is saying, wait, She is suggesting that a boring, functional marriage might be better for the developing child than a happy divorced parent. It's a very conservative, traditionalist view in some ways. It prioritizes the collective family unit over the individual's romantic fulfillment.
So we've spent a lot of time on Wallerstein's findings, and they are grim.
They really are.
But now we need to put on our critical thinking caps. We need to transition to Section 6, the critique. Enter Dr. Bad News.
Yes, we have to shift from believing the source to critiquing the source.
Why is she called Dr. Bad News?
Because critics argue she looks for pathology. She looks for what went wrong. If you go looking for trauma, you will find it. It's a kind of confirmation bias in her whole research paradigm.
Let's talk about the methodological flaws. We hinted at them earlier.
First, sample bias. This was a small group, 60 families.
And they're all from Marin County, right?
Right. Northern California. Affluent. White. This is not a slice of global humanity. This is a very specific slice of 1970s America. You can't generalize from this to everyone.
And the cohort effect. They divorced in 1971.
This is huge. Think about divorce in 1971 versus 2026. In 1971, it was a scandal. It was stigmatized.
You're the only kid in class with divorced parents. You felt like a freak.
Exactly. Now, it's common. Fathers are more involved now. Co-parenting is a word people actually use. Back then, dads just became weekend visitors.
So are the effects Wallerstein found due to divorce itself or due to the stigma and isolation of divorce in 1971?
That's a million-dollar question, isn't it?
That is a crucial distinction. Also, the lack of a control group.
This is a major scientific no-no. She didn't have a comparison group of intact families running parallel from the start. She added a comparison group later, but it wasn't perfect. It's not the same.
And blinding?
We mentioned this. The interviewers knew who was divorced. If I know you are a child of divorce, I might subconsciously interpret your sadness as divorce trauma, whereas if I think your parents are married, I might just think you're having a bad day.
That's confirmation bias.
It's textbook.
So there is counter-research.
Plenty. Researchers like Sanford Braver and Joan Berlin Kelly,
What do they say?
they argue that most children of divorce are resilient. They say the differences between divorced and intact families are statistically small. They point to the bell curve and say, look, the average kid turns out fine.
So the average kid turns out fine.
Yes. And they raise the point of poverty versus divorce. Is it the divorce that hurts kids, or is it the poverty that often follows the divorce?
Correlation versus causation, the classic Psych 101 mistake.
Exactly. If you give the single mom enough money, does the trauma disappear? It's a valid hypothesis. If Group B moms had money for childcare and didn't have to work the second shift, maybe the gap years wouldn't have happened.
So where does the truth lie? We have Wallerstein saying it's a disaster, and we have the quantitative data saying it's fine.
The truth, as usual, is probably in the middle. Wallerstein provides a deep emotional truth. She captures the lived experience. The pain she documents is real.
Right.
You can't statistically analyze away the girl waiting outside the bathroom door. That happened. That pain is valid.
But the quantitative data provides the statistical truth.
Right. It tells us the average outcome. Not every kid ends up carrying a photo of their past life. Not every kid is traumatized forever. Most kids are okay.
So what does this mean for us, for the learner listening? Section 7. Implications.
If you are listening to this and you are a child of divorce, I think the takeaway is about the internal template.
Understanding that you might have a gap in your model.
Exactly. Just knowing, oh, I'm terrified of conflict because I never saw it resolved, gives you power. It helps you break the cycle. You aren't doomed to fail just because your parents did.
You can build a new template.
You can be the architect of your own relationships. You can learn those skills.
And if you are a parent, or planning to be one.
The importance of civility. And maintaining the child's relationship with the other parent. Unless, of course, there is abuse. But in general, don't force your kid to choose sides. Don't make them carry your anger. Don't make them a woman in chains.
And on a policy level.
Courts need to look beyond the breakup snapshot. Parenting changes over time. We saw that with Group B. A mom who was a mess at year 1 might be a great mom at year 5. The legal system needs to be flexible enough to recognize that.
And financial enforcement.
Absolutely. We need to ensure mothers don't fall into Group B, the survival mode group, purely due to economics. If we support the single parent financially, we protect the child's development. It's a societal investment.
This has been a heavy lift. My brain is definitely full.
It really has. There's so much to think about.
But before we go, I want to leave everyone with a final provocative thought.
Let's hear it.
We talked about the good enough marriage. In our modern quest for the perfect soulmate, for that rom-com ending, Have we undervalued the stability of a boring but functional partnership?
That cuts deep. It's the ultimate question of individualism versus collectivism. Does the modern pursuit of individual self-actualization fundamentally conflict with the biological needs of children for stability?
Something to mull over.
Indeed, a lot to mull over.
Before you lie awake thinking about that, remember to prioritize your rest. Check out Cozy Earth, use code PSYC101, and give your brain the downtime it needs.
Absolutely. Good sleep hygiene is key.
All right, pack up your books. Class dismissed.
See you next week.